Yes?
Hi, I'm here for the New York Ghost Tour.
Sorry, we're closed. But you can come back next week.
Next week? Forget that. I'll just go check out another place.
Trust me, there's no place half as interesting as ours, dear.
That's so not true. What about the Shanley Hotel in Napanock?
Once you've been to one haunted hotel, you've been to them all.
Not like this place. The Shanley Hotel dates back to 1845, and since then it's been a hotspot for paranormal activity. Mysterious music, smells, whistling, doors opening, footsteps, almost everything you can imagine has been experienced at that hotel.
It's open to the public?
Absolutely. Sal and Cindy, the owners of the hotel, welcome people for regular stays or investigations, and their rates are beyond reasonable. They even offer workshops and in-house psychics.
How did you learn about this place?
By visiting www.shanleyhotel.com. You can get history, investigation info, and much more.
Thanks, I think I will. Just don't tell any of our customers.
This is Annette Martin, and this is Game Con Radio. We rock your game and your paranormal world.
Who's that puppy with the pink guitar? Hanging his tongue out the back of my car. He's got a spandex collar with a gold-plated chain. Well, that kooky canine's my main Great Dane. Rock and roll, Scooby-Doo. You make all the chicks go woo. Rock and roll, Scooby-Doo. Doggy Daddy, you're too cool. Big wild party every Saturday night. Around an old fire hydrant on the Upper East Side. With a pretty pair of poodles he picked up at the pie. No bones about it, he's a crazy hound. Rock and roll, Scooby-Doo. You made all the chicks go woo. Rock and roll, Scooby-Doo. Doggy Daddy, you're too cool. Scooby-Doo, where are you? Here I am.
Hey, little girl, what would you do for a Klondike bar? Game Con Radio, the station your mother warned you about.
We are live back on the GameCon Radio Network. This is Dr. William Lester Show, and I will resume these fun stories as soon as I get this pipe lit. And so I'm going to let you listen to me take one puff, 2, 3, and 4. And now, my pipe is lit, and we have the wonderful aroma of this Virginia Cavendish wafting in the air, wonderfully appropriate for the season. And that's good. Now, you guys have been listening to me for a while, know that I love werewolf stories. And here's a fun one. Well, I don't want to say fun because I don't want you to think that I'm not being serious here. A werewolf sighting. So fortunately, it's not an attack. December 16th, 2008. This youngster says that my school had just finished midterm testing. So 3 of my friends and I decided to go into the woods near my house in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And if you know that part of the world, you know that a lot of times there's nothing else to do but go into the woods behind the house. I'd never gone that far into these woods before, but I decided I was up to it, and we ventured in. We came across an old waterway that would stop flooding. As we followed it, we were going further and further into the woods. I don't get scared easily, but I believe in the paranormal world, and it got really quiet, which crept me out. At 1:15 p.m., we saw a black figure moving through the woods. It was, I would say, given the distance, about 6 feet tall. The creature's face was elongated like that of a wolf, but it was humanoid in appearance and ran like a human. It moved faster than I can at top speed. Whatever it was stopped and looked around as if it knew we were there. The creature took off shortly after. None of us wanted to move right away in case it came back, but we decided to leave. It was a good move, guys. Since that day, we have only told a handful of people what happened, and my friends wish to remain unnamed, so I will honor their wish. Now comes what I believe this creature to be. Given the stated details, I will say in all truthfulness that this creature that we saw and that possibly saw us was none other than a werewolf. I would never have believed this to be what I truly think it is if I did not see it for myself. So, werewolves in modern day America. Mm. Now, here in Georgia, we always have our fair share of weirdness. And I am not referring in this case to any of our elected officials, although, well, that's another show. But we have a sighting here in Georgia by someone who is identified as the initial Y. Phillips. And his story is as follows. This happened to me and my grandpa on a hunting trip in July 2008. I don't see my grandpa very often, so I always take the chance to take trips with him. Grandpa is pretty much an outdoorsman and enjoys hunting, fishing, and just being out in nature. Grandpa and I were out in the woods. It was around 3 to 3:30 on Friday, the 25th of July. I was 18 at that time. We were on Grandpa's land in Georgia. It's a pretty place with the typical Georgia woodland and a few grassy plains. We were walking on a little rocky road headed for a site where Grandpa often sees deer. As normal, there were lots of sounds going on in the woods. We ignored most of them and remained quiet to not scare away anything. Suddenly, we heard an unusual noise we never heard before on our many hunting trips. Grandpa looked at me and listened. Then he raised his finger in front of his mouth to show me that we shouldn't make any more movements. I heard a lot of movements and more of the noise. I can't really describe the sounds, but I sure can describe what I saw, even when it was pretty dark. We just kept listening to the sounds as suddenly something came walking slowly out of the bushes and onto the road, maybe 150 yards in front of us. My eyes got really big, and at that moment, I wasn't even scared, just amazed to see this creature. We didn't move. As crazy as it sounds, it looked just like a velociraptor from the popular Jurassic Park movies. Now, wait a minute. All right. He goes on to say, I just froze because I thought things like that lived many thousands of years ago. Well, listen, Buster, many millions of years ago. It had a long, stiff tail, walked on 2 feet, and had short arms. It looked lizard-like and had a huge claw on both of its feet and smaller claws on his arms. Since the creature appeared to us that it could run fast, we decided to just not move at all. It raised its head in the air, and it seemed like it was smelling the air. I estimated its height around 5 feet at the shoulders. After sniffing the air, it made these sounds again and turned around and ran off into the bushes. Grandpa and I waited until we felt safe again and then quietly made our way back to the truck and drove home. In the truck, we talked to each other about what we had seen and decided not to tell it to Grandma because she would think we were crazy. I never believed in stuff like ghosts and creatures and paranormal stuff, and I still don't believe in ghosts. But since that encounter, I believe in creatures that science doesn't know about. That's my story. As odd as it sounds, I know what I saw. So, again, prehistoric creatures living in the modern era. Could a creature like a velociraptor somehow prowl the woodlands of Georgia? Now, Georgia, like many other areas of the South, has a tremendous amount of woodland territory. When you get out of the city, 100 miles, 200 miles. I've been in places in the state of Georgia where you can go down a road and you can look to your left as far as you can see and see nothing but trees. And you can look over to your right as far as you can look and see nothing but trees. And you can look straight ahead down the road and see the road and then trees. And so there are vast, vast stretches of wooded areas. And I know that this is the case in many other states. And so the question of whether a strange, unknown, undocumented, unstudied creature could exist and go undetected by science, could that actually happen? Of course. Of course. And if it couldn't happen, if it were impossible, then we would not be discovering new species all the time. Now, granted, many of these new species we discover are insects and strange new species of fish that live in unimaginable depths of the ocean. But still, we discover new species of birds, reptiles, and other, more conventional animal life. So I've never had a problem with the idea of these creatures out there that are hardly ever seen. And I think it was I don't know, sometime last year, I had a Bigfoot researcher on from Tennessee. And we were kind of speculating about how many Bigfoot creatures there were. For example, between the state of Georgia and Tennessee. And we were, obviously it was just speculation, in the absence of any hard numbers. But it's okay to speculate if you're employing some degree of logic and you're basing it on sightings, data, etc. And one of the things that we compared it to was white-tailed deer. Now we know that if you take the state of Georgia and the state of Tennessee, we know that there have got to be hundreds of thousands of white-tailed deer. And that's a conservative number. We know that they're out there. But how often do you see a deer? You may catch one dashing across the road here and there. Or whatever. If you go camping or something, hiking, you may catch a glimpse of one here and again. And there are hundreds of thousands of them. There may be 1 million deer in Georgia and Tennessee combined. What if you have a creature that exists in vastly smaller numbers than that? Just say there may be 10 or 12 of these creatures in this given region. 10 or 12 versus a million, all right? And then you add to that, and I'm going to use Bigfoot as my sample here because that's everybody knows, what I mean when I say Bigfoot. Well, we're going to go ahead and assume that Bigfoot is far more intelligent than a white-tailed deer because it's a hominid. It's probably something apish or ape-like, or something with a similar evolutionary history to man. Large cranial structure, a biped, body hair, probably far more intelligent than a white-tailed deer. So this creature actually is going to know how to hide from human activity. It's probably going to shy away from human interaction. Now, if you factor all of those things in, how often is that thing going to be seen? Well, the answer is almost never. Almost never. And what'll happen? Occasionally, from time to time, you'll read a report on some cryptozoology website, or you'll hear somebody on this show or some other similar show talking about somebody seeing a Bigfoot. So please don't think, don't fall into this simple minded quagmire that so many people fall into, which says, well, if it was out there, we'd see it all the time. Because, like I said, I think I've seen maybe 10 deer in my life. And I live in a state that's just crawling with deer. So can these things be out there? Absolutely. Now, obviously, everybody who claims to see something is not seeing something. We have misidentifications. Obviously, we have hoaxes. We have people who don't know when to, put down that other drink and pick up a Coca-Cola. But these things are out there. And the same thing about UFOs. Oh, wait a minute. Before I get to UFOs, because I'm going to have to touch on UFOs. Uh, there is a statement in the chat room which says, "I wonder what they do with their dead," which is a totally fair question. Okay, and it needs to be answered. Uh, there's several things going on with that question. Uh, one is this: in the wilderness, and you can ask any hunter or naturalist or tracker or woodsman, whatever you want to, and what they will tell you is that if you spend any amount of time in the woods, you're not going to come across the body of a dead bear, which of course exists in vastly greater numbers than Bigfoot. We know that there are thousands of black bear in this part of the country, black bear in other parts of the country, brown bear, grizzly bear, whatever kind of bear you want to name. And that's because nature is a very efficient, well-oiled machine. Nature reclaims its dead quickly, efficiently. So you're not going to trip over dead bears. Secondarily, an animal like a bear uh, typically can sense when it's going to die. It'll crawl away to an obscure, isolated place. So, in other words, saying all that to say, you're not going to run across, many large dead animals in the woods. So, again, using the Bigfoot example, vastly smaller numbers, far more intelligent. Uh, you're not going to find any dead ones. I've heard stories that the Bigfoot bury their dead. I can't I can't validate or debunk that because I just haven't seen a sufficient data to draw a conclusion about that. If Bigfoot is if Bigfoot possesses a level of intelligence that is equal to, say some form of early man, then is it possible that they bury the dead? Yeah, it's possible, but I can't say yes or no. What seems more likely to me is that they just exist in such small numbers that the odds of running across a dead one are probably even less than those of encountering a living one. But now the debunkers who say that Bigfoot doesn't exist because we never find a dead one, well, they're just talking out of a particular orifice of their body that I'm not going to reference here. I think the same is true about UFOs. If there's anybody left who think that UFOs aren't real, and let me apologize ahead of time because I'm going to make somebody mad, or somebody will feel offended. So let me just pre-apologize if this happens to be you. But if there's somebody left who thinks that UFOs aren't real, they have got to fall into one of the following categories. Number one, they simply have not spent any time looking at the UFO data. And by data, I mean the literature, which encompasses sightings, reports, photographs, videos, eyewitness accounts, that stretch back, let's just say 60 years. You just, you just haven't studied that data and you're just throwing out an opinion. That could be category number one. Category number two is that the reality of UFOs may upset your worldview for whatever reason. What old hip likes to call terminal uniqueness, where you think that mankind is the end all be all. And you can't handle the fact that there's somebody out there with perhaps superior technology, etc. So it clashes with your worldview. Or you may be wrapped up real tight with some religion that doesn't account for it. Okay. And now now this particular category accounts for a lot of people. Okay. UFOs, they don't talk about aliens in the Bible, so they can't be real. Well, you can argue whether or not they talk about aliens in the Bible. That is debatable. But they also don't talk about cell phones and laptop computers and satellite dishes and nanotechnology in the Bible. But guess what? All of those things are real. Category number 3. You are just incurably stupid. And there's an old saying that there's no cure for stupid. Those are the 3 categories. This is Dr. William Lester's show. We are coming to you live from the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia. We are all over the GameCon Radio Network, and we will be right back after a short break.
Hey, this is clairvoyant medium Francine Milano giving a shout out to GameCon Radio.
Tired of the neighbors always complaining because you play your music too loud? Well, turn it all the way up and rip the knob off that sucker so you can't hear them, bitch. GameCon Radio. Being just as bad as we want to be.
Yeah, you got satin shoe.
We are back live on the Dr. William Lester Show for our final segment on this wonderfully cool, crisp October evening, even here in the deep south. Temperature is down. We had a little rain yesterday, and the rain cleared out, and it left in its wake some wonderful autumnal weather. And so, you know how it is. You got to go deep in the closet and unpack. Get the, move the mothballs out the way, and pull out the sweaters, and jackets, air them out. Maybe in the evening, click on the little heater, put a little space heater in the room, and whatever. But it's getting on that time of year, and we are officially. I think I've always considered you know Halloween really pushes us into the holiday season. All right. Uh, because obviously Halloween's October 31st, next day is November 1st. Holiday season is on in full fashion. Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc. So we are really in the opening salvo of that time of year. And it's always kind of a cool and interesting thing to see. Uh, and like I said, a week from today is trick or treat time. So, we're off and running. Tonight, uh, we have kind of having a homecoming because we are uh, carrying out the show in a format that we did way back when me and Old Hip were at a network called APSR. And I would come on and I would share these weird stories with the audience, these weird, sometimes amusing, sometimes creepy anecdotes with the listeners. And we're doing that again tonight. Hadn't done that in a long time. We've had a cavalcade of guests, and but tonight we're doing it like we did it in the old days. And I just got a message from Old Hip. It says 49 degrees up there in South Carolina. So that's what I'm talking about. So it's 49 degrees, you got to put something on. So I know it's got to be at least that cold up there where, I don't know, what's the temperature out there with you, Annette? Uh, and where's White Wolf live? Where's White Wolf and Smoochie? Does Smoochie live in Oklahoma? What's the weather like where you are, folks? Let me know in the chat room. While I tell you about a story sent in by screen name Bellflower about the black-eyed couple. That's right, the black-eyed couple. And Bellflower says it was the summer of 1983. Myself and two of my good friends, Katia and Amy, and I were at Santa Cruz on the beach by the boardwalk. They were not under the boardwalk, they were by the boardwalk, all right? It was a beautiful day, and we had been on the beach all afternoon. The sun was starting to go down, so we thought, let's pack up and hit a local pub/restaurant and get a beer and something to eat. We walked to the car about half a mile from the beach. As we were putting our towels and beach stuff in the back of the car, we noticed two young people standing looking at us. A young male around 20 and a female the same age. Both looked zoned out, kind of strange, just standing there watching us. I walked up to them and asked if they were okay and if they needed any help. Neither of them said a word. All of a sudden, Katia started screaming at me, "Get away from them!" I turned to look at Katia. She was very pale and shaking. I then turned back to the couple. I noticed their eyes and saw that they were totally black. The feeling that came over me was very, very scary and heavy. A thick darkness seemed to cover me. I felt a little numb, and my legs would not move. The guy with the black eyes asked me if they could get a ride. His voice was so shallow and unemotional. Before I could answer, Amy stepped in and said, "Sorry, we're not leaving right now." She grabbed my arm to help me walk away from them. I started to trip out and wanted to get the hell away. As you can tell, these are California kids, right? I started to trip out and get the hell out. Yeah. I could barely move. The weird girl reached out her hand to touch me, but I moved away from her. Her face looked so sad and her eyes so black. The whole time this was going on, Katia was in a paranoid state. Amy got the three of us to start walking away, and then the guy called us, well, I can't say that. The guy called us a blank. My friends and I kept walking, never looked back. We went into a bar nearby and did some and did some shots and forgot all about the beer. No one believed our encounter with these black-eyed people. We used to talk about that day and got creeped out. I sometimes feel like they are around just watching me, but when I looked for them, there is no one there. I never forgot this bizarre day at the beach. Katia and Amy won't even talk about it anymore. I have terrible dreams about them getting inside of me. Whoa. I know there's something real going on out there. I'm just not sure what it is or why. Now, what's up with these black eyes? And now, of course, on the chat room, I'm getting all of the Beach Boy lingo here. Yeah, dude, totally. We were out there surfing, just shooting some curls, and these black-eyed cats came out with. But you know, I don't know who it was. Annette said something about them being possessed, and I've seen or heard about this characteristic of the possessed before. And what? Here's what's weird about it, because I mean, I can buy into the possessed angle here, simply because I've it's in the literature, okay. But it makes one wonder, does it not? What could have been going on in the lives of these two people in which they would be, having a day at the beach and fall under possession? It's too weird, isn't it? Those black eyes, man. Now, Jenna sent in a story called The Demon of Witch Hill. Not Witch Hill, like which one is it, but Witch, W-I-T-C-H. And this is a story from across the pond, over in jolly old England, merry old England, I say. And, let me tell you something about England, too. Because, many Americans are quite taken by, a British accent. When you go to England, you notice it's just like here, in that you see different accents when you go to different parts of the country. And of course, we're all familiar with the different accents around the United States when we go to different regions, the Northeast and whatever. Same thing in England. You go to London, even in London, the different parts of London, where you can go to some places and they talk like Sherlock Holmes. Elementary, my dear Watson. That kind of accent. And then you go to, some of the other areas, the East End, Lower East End, whatever, and they say, "Hey, governor," and they drop all the H's. "Hey, governor, can you spare a few quid?" And that kind of thing. And then you go up to the northern part of the country, around Liverpool, and you find out that they talk like the Beatles talk, like that. So, just a little interesting cultural, possibly totally irrelevant side note. But anyway, Jenna sent us this story from England called The Demon Witch of Bell Hill. And she says, "I live in a small town on the southwest coast of England. As far back as I can remember, the town's old people have talked about supernatural activity. The lady who runs the general store, my grandparents, the fishermen, everyone over the age of about 50 or so. They've seen ghosts, werewolves, and UFOs. That's quite a trifecta there. But my parents and the other younger generation seem to be a bit more skeptical about it. It was 2006 and I just turned 16. There isn't much to do around where I live, so a few friends and I decided to hike to the top of a nearby hill where witches were apparently burnt once upon a time and camp there for the night. Here's a note, here's a quick safety tip. If you know that there were witches sacrificed in a particular area, choose another campsite. This hill has always been a site for supernaturalists, and so there's a tourist information hut that only opens after dark, as well as a row of toilets. Only the British can be that candid. We camped up in the late afternoon and cooked sausages over a bonfire. There were 6 of us, me, 2 guys, my 2 best girlfriends, and my boyfriend. Just before 7,